Welcome to First Dates and Soulmates, the romance podcast that loves talking about numbers and the business of books just as much as we like reading sexy scenes. This is Nikki McKnight, joined as always by my co-host Meg Casebolt. Hi, Meg.
Hey, Nikki.
So today we're doing a fun little follow-up episode to our previous one, where I get to interview you and your alter ego, your pen name, your other persona, author Bailey Seaborn. So Meg, it's been almost 2 months to the day at the time of this recording that your debut fiction novel has come out, Peppermint Bark No Bite. So how are you feeling? That's been 2 months. Like, where the hell did time go? I literally looked at the clock on my desk and I went, holy shit, it's almost been 2 months at the time of this recording.
Yeah, the book came out on July 25th and we are recording on September 24th. So it's been almost 60 days, which, I mean, you and I have both been in the online business space for long enough that we know how every launch goes, which is that it's this huge, big, all-consuming, takes up your entire life situation. And then you have this big vulnerability hangover on the other side of it. You and I recorded our last interview maybe 2 or 3 weeks prior to the book coming out, so we had time to edit it. And so I didn't get a chance to share that I got walking pneumonia the week that I launched the book, which honestly wasn't the worst thing because it made me slow the fuck down. But also, and it wasn't like I needed to be live, you know, when I'm in the past, when I've launched for my business, it's been like, oh, I have to host a webinar and I have to show up and be present and write all these emails. And like, I felt like I had already done all of the work for launching the book by the time the book came out. So did we talk on the last episode about my hiring a publicity firm to help with the arts?
We talked a little bit about it. It was the Emily's.
Yes, booked with the Emily's. And so the actual publication date was really satisfying. You know, I've told a little bit of this before, but when I wrote my business book, which I released exactly a year prior, not to the date, but I released my business book about social media and becoming less dependent on social media in July 2023. And then I released my novel on July 2024. And when I launched the business book, it felt very much like unsatisfying crickets of like, I launched this thing and I messed up a step and all my pre-orders got canceled and people still bought it, but I didn't do the pre-work to get people reading it in advance. So I didn't feel like it was this big production that I wanted it to feel like. And so I learned from that experience with this one, and I hired Booked with the Emily's to help me get advanced reader copies out, to help get reviews in advance. And so by the time the book came out, I had a dozen reviews on Goodreads, or I think it was 24 on Goodreads, about a dozen on Amazon. Like, it wasn't huge, but it felt like people were actually talking about it. I hired them to do a book tour. So in exchange for advanced reader copies, people who were book influencers were creating user-generated social media content to say, here's what I like about this book, here's my review of it, here's why you should read it. And so between the launch date of July 25th and the first week of August, so a 2-week period, every day somebody was talking about my book.
Which is awesome.
And on publication day, I think the Booked with the Emily's team sent a broadcast out to all of the ARC readers to be like, today's the day that this came out. And so they were all like, happy pub day, happy pub day. So I felt like the launch was a celebration instead of just like a finish line.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting point to bring up. Again, when we, in our day-to-day lives, in our businesses or the businesses of our entrepreneurship, because as you talked in your episode with Shanae Howard, being a self-published author is like a whole other second job, like between writing and promoting. You know, we often think about things like, I got to write launch emails, I got to have a sales page, I got to have like an advanced sales mechanism, whether that's a lead magnet, whether there's some type of incentive to buy a cart open date, like, you know, buy now and get 10% off or get all these extra resources. So when you think about, obviously you had the support of the Emilys, but how did you kind of approach the idea of launching? Because I think launching a book and talking about it and really trying to get it into people's hands in that first couple of weeks and getting those pre-orders is so different from the act of actually writing it.
Oh
Because
my
it's like,
gosh.
oh, I wrote the thing and now I got to do things. So how did you kind of approach this idea of I got to launch this book that I've spent so much of my time on versus like what you did or you see as like us online entrepreneurs in terms of like launching? Like, what was the mindset going into it of I got to actually fucking launch and sell this thing now?
I mean, I think I had to remove myself from the writing process. I actually did not write any fiction in the month of July, which was hard for me because fiction to me is a creative outlet more so than, oh, let me, write my next book so I can make more money. Like it really is a self-care mechanism for me. But I knew that if I was trying to write book 2, launch book 1, continue to serve my clients in my SEO business, and also like spend time with my family and sleep, like something had to give. And so that was a big part of it is I just took my writing time and turned it into marketing time. Talking with you on the podcast and trying to grow social media. I actually did share that I wrote a romance novel with my business email list, which was a strange flex of like all these people know me as an analyst and a strategist, and then to come out and be like, oh, and I also do this thing for fun on the side. It was a risk that I was willing to take because I talked about it within the context of like being able to run this business gave me the time to write a romance novel. And if you like romance novels, you might like this one. It was less about the actual product versus the process and the space to write.
No, obviously that makes so much sense. And I think it is important because honestly, I was a guest speaker at a summit a couple weeks ago. And literally one of the things that, whenever, speakers are done or even on this podcast, when we have guests, we say, where can people find you? Or what would you like to plug, right? Like, here's your opportunity to say, if you liked what I've had to say, then come hang out with me elsewhere. I now make a very specific point to talk about this podcast. I'm like, sure, here I am on Instagram. Here's my email list. Here's my website, whatever. But I have a podcast. And the reason I'm talking about this is because my day job is operations, for those of you who are not in the know of my Justice for Operations professional writing thing here. But that presentation I was giving was all about hiring and delegation, how so many of us are doing it wrong. But mastering that gives you the opportunity to do passion projects. And the reason I can have this podcast is I've set up my business the way that I have. And I want to have things that are just for me and they're just fun and creative things. And people look at that and go, oh, wow, that actually makes sense. Like, you and I have talked about this a lot. We talked about this in the very first episode we did for the show, that we didn't want to do a business podcast. We've done that. We've each done that. Who gives a shit? So I think with your book, I think that's such a great thing to share. It's like, hey, you talk about like not relying on social media. You talk about SEO. You talk about all these things. It's like all of that has informed how I marketed this book that I made just for me. And if you stop relying on certain things, you too will have the opportunity to create things that are just for you, that are those fun passion projects. So I think it makes a fuck ton of sense.
It does,
but talk about it to your email list.
But I also recognize that my conversion rate on that is going to be much lower. I shared it on my personal Instagram or my personal Facebook account. I shared it on my personal social media networks, which like I don't post that much on social anymore. And the people that I didn't expect came out to talk to me about it. So like I had breakfast with my 8th grade English teacher because he's writing a YA novel, and he was like,
I love that.
Let's talk about self-publishing. Let's talk about querying, and let's talk about what you've been doing since 1998. And we had this really intense conversation over hash browns about the influence of Shakespeare's Henry V on both of our works. Not
Y'all
so
are
much
too smart.
Oh my God. Well, I learned Henry V in his class, and I told him that Henry V as a body of work informed book 3 of my series. And he was like, and we had this really detailed conversation about this speech that Henry gives of the Battle of Agincourt and St. Crispin's Day, like, because so much of ourselves go into our books. And so much of our own experiences and formative experiences go into our books. And so, it's just been this really interesting unfolding of this part of my life that was private for a long
Mhm.
time. You know, I started some of the books as like NaNoWriMo projects
Mhm.
that were never intended to be published. They were just sort of a challenge to myself, versus, you know, now it's like, okay, well, what am I going to do? What is this new business that is building for me?
Mhm.
And then so that we launched on July 25th, and then I have a friend who actually was my client as an SEO professional who was a book promotion strategist. And we were able to get her enough new clients through her SEO that she and I became friends. And
Mhm.
she read the book, she loves the book, and she sent me a Voxer message on July 26th, so the day after the book launched. And she went, "What can I do to support you now?" And I said, "Oh shit, I have no idea." I was like, why don't you tell me? Why don't you, the book promotion strategist, tell me what I should be doing now, right? Like, what is the thing that the author should be doing after the first launch? And so we had this conversation about bulk sales for book clubs. We had conversations about getting into independent stores. We had like some other avenues that could also help to grow the following. But she said, like, the best thing you can do is write book 2, book 3, book 4. She's like, and the thing that she noticed is that there tends to be, especially for novelists, not just in the romance space, but especially true in the romance space, at book 5, that's where things start to take off. Now, that's one person's opinion. That's one
Mhm.
person's experience. But I kind of see it that when you write book 2, people go back and they read book 1 and book 2, or they read book 2 and they're like, I want to go get the characters and get to know what happened in book 1. So there is this sort of compounding domino effect. But I don't want to. I don't want to force book 2 out before it's ready.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's something I was thinking about with regards to your book, because you know, you mentioned that it's essentially this other business. And certain authors that I follow online approach their writing very much like a business, and their book is a product. Now, I don't use the word product to kind of like say that they don't care about their writing, because that is not true. But they are constantly thinking about, okay, well, what is the Patreon incentive to get people to sign up for this? Or I'm going to release a special hardcover edition of this one, or I'm going to do, you know, these teasers and they're going to release each week for this. And I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
monetize in this way. I'm going to promote in this way. I'm going to lay the seeds in this one for a spin-off universe that's coming. I'm going to have a Facebook group where we talk about this, and here's what I'm going to post in my Facebook group. Like, especially when you are self-published, and again, much like you said in your episode where you interviewed Shanae Howard, it is this whole other freaking beast. And when you already have a full-time job on top of this, you know, is there anything that's kind of come up for you, but like, oh, I don't really want to do that ever, or I might look at that in the future, it's not realistic now, or yeah, I want to add that into my business as like a thing that I do or that I manage when it comes to the book writing aspect?
I think that I would like to be better at email marketing for the
Mhm.
book, to build an email list so that way I don't have to be on social media all the time, especially with the algorithms changing.
Mhm.
But I'm just not there yet. It's like my time capacity is so limited. I even know, like, you know, you can take a book magnet and say, what do you want to give people away for free? I even know what my book magnet would be. I have it set aside. But I just haven't taken the time to like, okay, I'm going to take this chapter from book 3, and I'm going to format it and I'm going to upload it to BookFunnel and set it up and send it out to the people who got the arcs to let them know that they can read like basically a second epilogue from book 1, which is a chapter from book 3, because the
Mhm.
characters from book 1 get married in book 3. So I've taken the maid of honor and best man speeches so I can pull
Mhm.
those out and people can get a little taste, but you also get it from the perspective of the new heroine. And like even just the thought of doing that, like, it's the right move for the business,
Mhm.
but it's already written. It would
Mhm.
probably take me less than an hour to do it. But then I have to also set up all the mechanisms for like, oh, put it on your page and get it onto the social and share on the
Yeah.
places. And like, is it worth the
Mhm.
2 hours, or should I take that 2 hours and create more social media? Should I take that 2 hours and prep for a podcast? Should I take that 2 hours and go
Mhm.
write a new chapter or half a new chapter or a new scene, right? Like, what is the best use of my time right now? Is it in creation, or is it in sales, or is it in audience gen? Like, it's really hard, especially when business has picked back up.
Mhm.
Business for me has my SEO consulting business has always been quiet in the summer, which is one of the reasons I was
Mhm.
like, I'll launch the book in the summer because I have
Yep.
fewer clients. But September, not the shit, it's the fan, because it's not like that. But people come back and I have work to do
Yep.
that pays my bills. So now I have even
Mhm.
less time for writing. So I guess that my biggest like smart thing that I did before I knew that I was doing it is I wrote 4 books before I published any of them.
Yeah, so with the rest of the series, plus, I have seen Meg's notion board of all these other planned future series. I keep talking about the winery series. I can't wait for the day that that comes to life. But like, there is a world where, there is this idea of don't write anything or don't create anything until you've already sold it. I see that a
Mhm.
lot in my work. People who sell digital programs, people who sell coaching programs, people who sell events, don't build anything until you've actually sold it. Because then you could spend a lot of time and money doing a thing and then nobody buys it. That's wasted time and money. Some people are like, build a little bit of it and then sell it and then build the rest as you go. Some people like to fully build something out or fully write something out before they ever even think about going to market. So with this book and the future ones that you have going, so you say you have multiples written, like where are you in terms of status on the other books? Like, because the marketing of those is going to be another beast, and how you
Yeah.
take those to market and how you build audience and all these things. But the actual writing, like what is done? What
Okay.
is on your hard drive?
So not a hard drive. No, it's all on Google Drive.
It's a cloud.
It's all in Readsy. So to answer your question first, the first part of the question, which is don't create anything new until you've sold it. I think that's the right move for traditionally publishing.
Mhm.
I have friends that are trying to get in traditionally publishing. They have a series that they're trying to pitch, a trilogy in particular. I have 2 friends that are trying to pitch trilogies. One is agented and going out to submission on to editors. Another one is looking for an agent. And both of them only wrote the first book because they want that to get picked up. So that way they get paid to write the next books in the series, and they're not changing things. They're not writing a full trilogy and then having an editor and agent come into book 1 and say, here's what you need to change. So I think that is good advice if you're traditionally publishing. If you're self-publishing, especially like you and I love interconnected series, I
Mhm.
think I need to know the full arc of a 4 or maybe 5 book series.
Mhm.
We can talk about that in a minute, because I have to set up the Easter eggs.
Mhm.
I want people, if once they read Mallory Clark's book, which is going to be the final book in the series, I want them to go back to Grace's book and be like, oh shit, I didn't know that's what was happening.
Mhm.
Right? I want those little moments to be in there. I want people who are thinking about picking up book 2, which is Victoria's book, to already know something about Victoria from book 1. And we can talk about that too, like where Victoria's book came from. But like, my friend Megan told me once, Meg, you're not writing 400,000 word books. You're writing 500,000 word books that switches POVs every 100,000
Yeah.
words. So it kind of has to be that way for my particular approach to
Mhm.
writing.
I like it. It's like this idea of like building blocks and,
Mhm.
to understand. Yeah. Like sometimes Easter eggs can happen by accident because you make something, like a TV show or a movie and people see that and they're like, oh, is that what you meant? And you're like, no, not at all. But yes, now it
Sounds like
is.
that's what happened to see Rochelle when she was writing too.
Right, exactly. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I found all these things that I didn't like." The fried chicken is what C.
Mhm.
Rochelle brought up, and actually, at the time of this recording, Rabble Endgame comes out in several days. So I
Tomorrow, right?
is
I've
it
already
tomorrow?
pre-ordered it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so that's coming tomorrow. So like, the fried chicken is coming back around. So sometimes the Easter eggs and things are just not at all planned. They just kind of come out naturally with people's reactions to the novel. And then yes, and other times like you have to very distinctly plot it. Like Christopher Nolan did not create Memento by accident.
No.
Every single Easter egg in Memento had to be very specifically placed. So in that sense, you kind of have to create all of it before you can kind of start fucking around with it. But yeah, I don't know if I could do that. That's
I don't know that most people could do Memento. It's a really intense plot.
There's a lot going on there. But in the last episode where we talked about your book, we did talk about the other books and who's going to be in each of them. And we talked about who's the visual inspiration for everybody, because me, I like Pinterest boards that show me what people look like. Now that the first one has come out and people have now met Grace and Alex and they're seeing all these other characters, has anything come up for you from that you're like, I think I might change some of this now, or some of my plot lines or things may have altered a little bit based on reaction?
Not really. Okay, so I think part of why this isn't changing is that Grace and Alex was not the first book that I wrote. Mm-hmm. The first book that I wrote was actually Kate and Nick, which if you've read Grace and Alex, you probably feel Kate and Nick showing up in it, because I wanted to set them up. So Kate and Nick happen first chronologically because they are a second chance romance. So Kate is Mallory's best friend. She gets taken on vacation with Mallory when they're in high school and meets her older brothers. She has a crush on Nick immediately. Nothing happens. She goes back 2 years later. They kiss, and then like a year or two later, he moves to New York City while she's in college, and they get together. And then he gets this big break and he moves away. And all of that happens before, chronologically, before Peppermint Bark starts. And so even though that like past timeline has not been published, in my mind, it has already happened. So there are things that I almost can't change in the third book because in my mind, they've already happened. So like there's a we're not going to create like a looper situation, right? Like Ryan Johnson is this most specialist time boy. I don't know. My kids
loop. It'll be great.
I told you before that we watched Back to the Future 1 and we just finished watching Back to the Future 2. So now we're talking about the paradox of Back to the Future 2 and bumping into your former self when you were in the. It's a lot.
No, thank you.
Time travel. But anyway, so like the painting that Alex buys in book 1 was actually created in book 3.
I feel like what is going to come out, like once all of these books are out, is there's going to be some sort of visual diagram that's like, this Easter egg shows up here that links here. Like I think I mentioned it in a previous episode. I was talking about like stand-up comedy and how jokes with callbacks and why they're so effective. And I think the article specifically talked about one of Ali Wong's special. And it was the idea that like in chapter 1, I'll use chapter. In this part of her comedy special, she talks about this. And she makes a half-second reference to it here because at minute 37, she actually comes back to the beginning of that and tells you how it unfolded. So I can't remember what episode it was.
It was the Bridgerton season 3 one because
there you go.
I just put it into. I've been backdating the YouTube channel with old episodes,
there you go.
So I put it in today.
Yeah, so I feel like there you go. It was in our Bridgerton season 3 episode. Talking about this idea of callbacks and Easter eggs. And I just think that like that gets to be so cool because in some ways, like Easter eggs used to be put in things only for super fans, right? Like early MCU did this a lot. It was kind of like this idea of you would always sit in the theater for like a post-credit scene. It's like, and somebody would come on screen and then like the true fans of the audience would go, oh my God, it's like Dr. Namibia, and everybody else in the audience is going, who? Like, I don't get it. So like there is a place where Easter eggs can kind of not alienating, but they don't have any impact because we don't really know like, so what? Right. But I think with like the types of Easter eggs you can have in written form that aren't related to like this large pre-existing canon, like a Marvel universe. Oh, you mean that side character from like 1976's episode 4 of the Fantastic Four AU that was ghost written by SpongeBob SquarePants? Like you don't have that. But that's kind of like really cool when you start thinking of like, oh yeah, that piece of art, the piece is like, I would love at the end of this if you almost have like some sort of visual that's just like, hey, here's all the stuff and how it connected. Like there was this painting, there was this picture, there was this phone call. Remember when so-and-so stepped out in the hallway to take a phone call? Well, you actually see that on page in book 4 and here's why it happened. Like, I love that shit. Write that down. You got another thing for you to create, Meg. I would like.
I've got plenty of time before this series is over. Especially because I thought it was going to be a trilogy, and then it moved into 4 books, and now it might be turning into 5. So let me explain.
Wait, who's going to be the 5th? Okay, no, recap for the audience, for people who have maybe not listened to our other episode.
Okay, so recap for the audience starts with this. So it started as just, I was going to write a standalone second chance romance. That was it. And it was, like I said, Kate and Nick meet when she's in high school. They get together when she's in college. He moves away for 7 years, and then they are forced back together because they are both in a wedding party together. That's book 3 of the series. And I was like, well, whose wedding is it then? I don't know. So I had to create another couple that was getting married. And I'd written in the past timeline that Mallory had 2 older brothers. She had Nick and she had Alex. And Alex was immediately an unlikable character. So obviously I did what every romance writer is. And I'm like, okay, I got to find someone for Alex. So that way it can be his wedding. And so that's where Grace and Alex sort of came from, is I had to find a wedding. I had to find somebody, because originally it's going to be Mallory's wedding. And I'm like, Mallory's not ready to get married. No. Mallory cannot be getting married in this book. And so then I wrote Grace and Alex and then tied it back into this. And then when I was writing Alex's book, the first draft of Alex's book, he and Victoria are still dating.
Ooh,
they are still in an active relationship that neither of them is satisfied in, but neither of them has broken up with the other one. They're just like kind of in this static, unhappy thing. And I talked to my friend Alexa Martin about it, and she has written several books in a long series, but her first novel, her debut novel, Intercepted, starts in a similar way, where she's in an unhappy relationship, and he's, I'm going to say, like the tight end on the football team, and then the quarterback comes in and she ends up with the quarterback of the football team, right? Like the advice that Alexa gave me is you have to break them up by chapter 6. All right. And so that was, and then in subsequent drafts, I was like, oh, I'm just going to break them up beforehand, but they'll still work together. So I have Alex and Victoria still working together. They had dated, they had lived together, they had been in a very serious relationship. And neither of them has quite moved on, but they're not dating anymore. So I could get around that clause of cheating, because romance readers don't like cheaters.
It's true.
So that was my workaround. And so I had them still working together. And then part of Alex's character arc is thinking about someone other than himself. Mm-hmm. And so Grace sort of shows him how to do that, says like, stop thinking about your promotion, your dad's in the hospital, right? Like that's their first interaction. And over the course of the book, he starts to think about Victoria and like, hey, she's getting just as screwed at this job that we work at together than I am. Let me start a business with Victoria. And that's how that book ends. And I sent Victoria out onto the porch so Alex can have his grand gesture with Grace. And then I just left her there for a year. I was like, okay, Victoria got her happy ending. She doesn't have to work in that toxic environment anymore. And then I started writing Mallory's book. And they're at this nonprofit gala, and Mallory needs someone to go write Alex's name on all the silent auction items. And she picks up Victoria and is like, let's go do this. And they're like, ha, ha, ha. And I'm like, shit, what has Victoria been doing for the last 3 years?
She's been sitting on a porch by herself going, hello?
Is anybody here?
Anybody?
And I thought about how weird that would be to move from San Francisco to New York and start a business with your ex-boyfriend who is in love with somebody else. That's a heroine situation, right? Like that was more interesting to me than anything else. So I was like, okay, what's Victoria's story? And so Victoria got inserted. That's where her story starts, is we switch perspectives in that same moment of, Alex and Grace are standing inside, Victoria and Mallory are having a conversation outside. And that's chapter 1 of Victoria's book. So that's a lot of what happens kind of behind the scenes of, what am I doing with, like, I wrote this character. I adore her. She was just supposed to be this sort of other woman character, or like the stand-in for the patriarchy. But what does her happy ending look like? Because it's very different.
Yeah, actually, I just want to say, like, this is a heroin situation is another merch idea I'm adding to our list
Yes.
because in our last episode we had season 3 Big Bad. I love that. I would definitely like. That's actually I'm just gonna start using
We'll call it
that.
"This is my heroin situation."
Oh my god, I actually also just really want that as a sticker to like
Mm-hmm.
throw it on things, and I'm also going to use it as a hashtag. This is my heroin
I
situation.
love it.
Because if it's real bad, I'll just drop the E and it becomes another sort of situation.
It's a very different
entirely.
situation.
Oh wow. I just love all of this like the plotting and the pacing. And I think it was, it's something we talk about in like again, I'm a huge movie and film person. So we talk about it in screenwriting, right? And then there was a clip from not like a masterclass, but something like that. And it was like, I think it was the writers from South Park who were talking about this idea that you can't, a bad plot is something that goes, this happens, then this, then this, then this, then this. And he's like, this is weak. Nobody cares. But if you can have this happens so that this happens, therefore this because of this, right? And like when you can start looping those things together, that's when your plot actually gets like some legs under it. It gets stronger. It makes more sense narratively. So I feel like, yeah, I have to create a couple. Who's getting married? It's these people. Well, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
Why is this? Why is this? Why, like, you know, I think about like action movies, and to me a really good action movie, like it can be 90% action scene, that's fine, so long as they move the plot forward, because an action scene that has plot and character development in it is extremely tricky to do.
Yeah.
So when it's done well, it's like, oh my god, this is phenomenal, versus what did I just
I
watched
just watch people
5
blow
minutes
shit up.
of a punch kick fight, like who cares.
Yeah.
So I really like that kind of,
Another
again,
another framework that might help,
contributing.
instead of like this happens so that this can happen. My friend Jamie taught me this one, which is when, then, until. So if we were to take, we just did a couple weeks ago, we did Heartless by Elsie Silver, where it's like when Cade needs a nanny, he's interviewing people, but he doesn't want to hire anybody. Then Willa drops her panties and moves into his house, and they're doing really well until she finds out she's pregnant, right? Like, so there are all these different pieces that's that build upon each other, and you need to have that, two characters who have very different goals, two characters that have very different motivations, and then the conflict inherent in it. So when I started writing Victoria, I'm like, okay, Victoria is the most long-term Enneagram 3 character ever. Like, she has everything plotted out for her life, and then it falls apart, including like she thinks Alex, she doesn't care. She's not romantically attracted to Alex. She just thinks Alex would look good with her publicly. Like, she's very, very like, she wants things to look and appear a certain way. And then I have her paired up with Cruz, who is like one night stands only, nothing long term, won't, like, has no interest in being in a relationship. And they think, they meet in the elevator because she lives in the penthouse and he lives in the basement. She's, this high-powered billionaire basically, and he's the superintendent of her building. So we have class struggles happening. We have different goals, and these goals are conflicting, where even though they're attracted to each other, they want very different things. Like, there's so much that I could play with because she's so extreme in the way that she sees the world, that I have to soften her up and melt her down.
Yeah. And didn't you just get the cover for their book back? Yeah. Y'all is good. As speaking of someone who has seen it, I know you're jealous.
So I'm working again with Sam Palencia from Ink and Laurel. She did the cover for Peppermint Bark, and I have her contracted to do the whole series. So it's Victoria and Cruz. It's very different vibe with them, but it has to be, it fits their personalities. Grace and Alex are so intimate and insular and looking at each other, and Cruz and Victoria are, they're still kind of in that bubble, in that zone, but they're engaging with each other in a very different way than Grace and Alex. It's also like a lot steamier as plot lines go.
I feel like Victoria would just be steamy, and Cruz in general feels like he's got a lot going on under the hood, as it were. Tingles in the groiny bits for everyone.
Oh.
So you mentioned, was it Jamie that told it had the when then until
Mm-hmm.
structure? So throughout this process, and maybe more so now that the book is out, has there been any like really good advice or takeaways that you've received from either fellow author friends or from any of the people who supported you in this launch that you're like, yeah, got to remember this, or this is like really key if you're going to do this?
Well, I think one of the things that that Jamie has taught me. So Jamie Jensen, she is from, I'm going to say Script and Scribe, but let me look that up for you. She was my writing coach through this whole process, and one of the things that she taught me, especially with Peppermint Bark, which I've taken into the future ones, is like know your comps, know your competitors. And so one of our first actions together, she was like, okay, go look at who else would rank for holiday romances, for transgender romances, for foster parent romances, like see how those, and Eat Grumpy Sunshine, right? Like see what's happening in the marketing of those novels.
Mm-hmm.
And be aware of them. Not that you have to change the structure of it, but just like be aware of how people are talking about them. Be aware of like, are their blurbs in first person or third person, and how much information are they giving, and what do their covers look like, and just kind of being aware of the marketplace. And I haven't changed any of the plots for the upcoming novels, but I have been thinking
Mm-hmm.
more about like, oh, this Victorian Cruise is a neighbors to lovers fake dating. And I think about it a little bit differently because I think of it in terms of the marketing aspects of it and the pitchability and marketability of the books versus just what is the thing that I want to write.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. And then, on the flip side, from not experts, or people who support you, anything you maybe learned or heard from your audience through either the reviews or, people who commented or sent you messages, anything that was kind of big there that you're like, oh, that's really good. Or also, was that just really nice to hear?
It's really nice to hear. There's something very satisfying about somebody like live tweeting the final chapters of your book to you and being like, this part, this scene. So if you have, even if you're like just, Instagram friends with an author and you want to send them a DM of like, oh my God, this line was incredible. Like they would love to hear it. Or maybe I'm just speaking for me. Go ahead, DM me. I want to hear. I want to know what you're highlighting. I want to know what your questions are. I want to know what your favorite plot lines are. And then I also have had a lot of people reach out to me and be like, what happened to this character who was never supposed to get their own book? And I'm like, you know what? Like, great question. I'm going to write it. So now there's a book between Kate's book and Mallory's book.
Who is it?
It's Elijah.
I knew it because that's one of the ones that I wanted. I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in our last
I think
episode when we were
so.
talking about it. I was like, so Elijah.
I know. So a lot of people at the end of the book, I say, like, here are the next 3 books in the series. And I say, it's Victorian Cruise, it's Kate and Nick. And then I say, it's Mallory, and call me, like, tell me who you think she's going to end up with. And so many people have said Elijah. And I'm like, oh, no, Elijah can't handle
Oh no, I
Mallory.
actually don't see Elijah for that at all.
So I was like, well, who, Elijah had this really interesting backstory of he wasn't there for the person who's most important to him and he feels guilty about it. And how would that impact his relationship now that, especially now that he is more settled, like what would that do to Elijah if the wound that impacts his character arc happens in book 1? Why not explore it in book 4? So we get to see Elijah. I mean, Elijah is not so much in book 2 because he's just not related to Victoria.
Yeah.
But he's a big part of book 3. We bring him back at the end of book 3 to give him his own book in book 4. The person that he ends up with is introduced in book 2 and kind of builds in book 3 a little bit more. So like it should feel like a natural progression, but there's also a part of me that for the first time with this book, because I have already written and released book 1, I've written book 2, I'm halfway through book 3, like I have a lot going on. I started to think of this as like, well, what are the tropes that this hits that aren't the same tropes that I've already touched in the other books in the series?
Mm-hmm.
Because I want it to feel like I mean, you and I have already talked about this a lot, where it's like when we picked up Heartless, it was like, well, I'm diving into book 2, but then I'm going to go back and read book 1, 3, 4, 5, or whatever, so I want people to be able to pick up any book based on their preferences and their tropes and then go, oh my God, I need to know what else happened here. So trying to hit different audiences and different interests and different entry points while making sure each book can be standalone, but these characters overlap is, it's hard.
Yeah, I always hold out that Elijah might have a little bit of a bi awakening for me personally, because he went through a lot with his background and getting reunited with Grace. So I'm kind of like, you know what I would really love for Elijah? But that's just me.
I am not going to speak to, like, I feel okay with talking about some of the books because they're more solid. I can tell you, I'm not going to tell you everything that happens in book 3 or even book 5.
No, I
but
don't
like,
want you to.
I know what happens in those, versus I'm still exploring Elijah and Elijah's partner. I know them, but I don't know them together well enough yet.
Yeah. Just put it out into the world that maybe it'll manifest, maybe not with him, but maybe with another character.
Maybe we'll see.
So go ahead.
Oh, and the other thing that you asked me, which I should probably circle back to, is how much is written. So Victoria's book's probably going to be about 100,000 words, which is the same length that it might be a little bit longer than Alex's, which was 103,000 words. I think Victoria might be about 110. I've sent the first 70,000 now to Sydney Fowler, who we interviewed them on the podcast. They're my sensitivity reader. And so even though this book 2 doesn't need a trans sensitivity reader, I just love their developmental feedback. And already, wait, I want to pull this up exactly. So they just finished reading through chapter 1. So I'm still kind of early in the process. Let me make sure I get this exact.
Yeah, because our episode with Sydney Fowler, if y'all have not listened to it, it is so good. Because I didn't really know a lot about what a sensitivity reader was, other than like the first thing that came to mind for me was like tone policing and word policing. And after listening to Sydney and talking with them, I'm like, oh no, I had completely the wrong idea what the point of this was. And that episode is brilliant. So highly recommend going back and listening to that interview because it was so good.
I love the work that they're doing here. And one of the things that they said in their notes to me is, I'm a Grace loyalist, but you're doing a great job swaying me to root for Victoria's evil agenda.
I think you showed me a screenshot of that message or like that Google comment.
Where it's just like, that's the perfect example of everyone is going to adore Grace if they've read Peppermint Bark. And you're like, well, Victoria, I never wanted her to walk in and try to break up Grace and Alex, but like, she's the ex-girlfriend. She's not the logical next person to take over. And there is something about like, I'm a Grace loyalist, but I still can root for Victoria's evil agenda.
I think it's good because you know who it's not like? What was that other evil ex-girlfriend? Was it Josh and Hazel that had Tabitha? Yeah, see, that's an ex scenario, though. If you listen to our episode on Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating, like that's the kind of ex that I'm like, if the next book had been about Tabitha, I'd be like, oh fuck, no, I'm out.
Yeah,
like that's not a redeemable character. Yeah. But really, like Victoria didn't do things that were irredeemable.
No, right? I actually think that she was very kind. Cool person. She was. Yeah. I mean, when Alex came home heartbroken in Act 3 of their book, she came over with ice cream and watched The Princess Bride with him. Like she was really supportive.
Humperdinck apologist, Alex. Yeah.
Both of them actually. she's actually an Inigo fan. Like that's her favorite character.
Everybody obviously is Manny Patinkin. Are there any just to kind of get down to like the brass tacks of this idea of like now the book is out into the world, are there any like numbers, results, anything like that from like a data perspective that you would be open to sharing?
So
how were things?
How were things? Kindle Unlimited in 2 months, just under 2 months, people have read 9,780 pages on Kindle Unlimited.
And how many pages is the book on Kindle Unlimited?
303.
Oh, Okay.
So it's kind of hard to say like how many people have
Mm-hmm.
finished the book because we
Mm-hmm.
don't get those numbers as authors. We get how many
Mm-hmm.
pages they've read. I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you that 8,500 of those are the United States and 600 are the UK and 560 are Australia. You know, like we get some
Where's
information.
Canada on that list? Because we were critical of Canada last time we mentioned
62
this.
pages.
Okay, that's a lie because I definitely got it on Kindle Unlimited first, read it, and then I bought it.
I don't know. I don't know what to
Lies.
tell you.
Maybe I read too fast. I'm always actually worried about that because I know they count pages, like they
Mm.
kind of learn your reading speed, is what I've been told. Because depending on your font size on your reader, obviously there can be more pages that you the user flip through. I'm always just curious about that because like I read very very quickly. I'm like a second a page type of deal. I'm always curious about that. Like, how many of my pages, quote unquote, count?
Yeah.
That's what I wonder.
And I
Okay.
don't think there's any way to know. And then also
No.
ebooks 53, print books 22. So not a
Are
huge
those
amount because I think more people are
American
buying.
or
These are
international?
those are total.
Mhm.
Because I also gave away 50 books for my ARCs, but
Mhm.
almost exclusively United States. 48 ebooks,
Mhm.
21 print, and then Canada 5 total, and
Mhm.
UK 1. So most people are buying on Kindle, but I don't know if they would have bought if it weren't on Kindle Unlimited. Like, there's no way for me to
Mhm.
know necessarily how many
Mhm.
people have downloaded, how many people have
Mhm.
um, read it or downloaded it but not read it. It's very much like
Mhm.
podcast stats, where it's like a download does not the
Equate
same
to
as
a
you
listen.
listen. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Um, so to kind of to wrap up this 2 months later recap, is there anything you want to like share with people about, how they can support you into this next iteration or what they can do to support you with this current book? Like, what do you want to tell the people listening today?
Um, I don't actually know. That's the really hard thing about this is like, I feel like either I am writing and I am in my writing cave or I am promoting, but it's very hard to do both of them at the same time. So I would say that if you haven't read Peppermint Bark, I would love if you could. I would love if you could review it. I would love if you could share it with friends. And then maybe, I don't know, you and I have been talking about maybe doing like a read along or a book club, not necessarily on the podcast, but like in December in preparation for, the new book coming out sometime this winter. So if you're interested in that, follow the podcast, hit us up in our comments, and just kind of be fans of the show. And we'll keep you up to date on what's happening next with the Bailey Seaborn pen name.
I love it. All right. Well, let us head into our closing question of the pod. Meg, who or what are you shipping this week?
I am shipping a book that, Stuff Your Kindle Day
Yes.
happened last month. I think you and I both
Yeah, it
went
was
through
dangerous.
and picked up like a million different things. Oh God, now I
So
can't find it.
many.
Um, and I got this book there called Affogato. It is written by E.M. Lindsay. It is the first
I've
book.
read it. I have it.
Oh, you have it or you have read it?
Both.
Okay. I loved it. It is two deaf characters. One of them is running a deaf run coffee shop where
Okay. Yeah.
yes, everyone who works there is disabled or differently abled in some way, and so these two characters, one of them grew up in a voice first household, so he couldn't hear at all. His older brother was hard of hearing, so they all spoke vocally, and nobody did sign language with him, and he was upset about that. And then our other hero, Bodhi, grew up in a house where sign language was off limits. And his grandparents were abusive and expected him to speak even though he
Mhm.
couldn't. And he's autistic. And so he really, really struggled. And so there's this conflict between Caleb, who's our cafe owner, and Bodhi, who is one of his employees, where they're struggling to communicate. And Bodhi is struggling to read. He's just learning how to sign. And it's just this really beautiful way of supporting each other, communicating with each other, and finding love for who you are, and like appreciating how difficult our families can make it on us, and we can still support each other in really incredible
Mhm.
ways. I loved,
Mhm.
loved, loved, loved this book.
Yeah, you got to read book 2.
I will.
Is London Fog. E.M. Lindsay, they are a phenomenal author when it comes to writing. They are one of the few authors I know that actually consistently writes disabled characters. They're I just finished rereading the 3 books in the Words We Never Said series of theirs like yesterday. I read book 3 yesterday because I think book 4 is coming out shortly. But they also wrote the Iron and Works series plus the Iron and Works spinoff, which is about a tattoo parlor, which has disabled tattoo artists that work there. You have the Carnal Tower, which is another very fun series that they've written that involves like, it's almost like a brothel in a way. It's called the Carnal Tower. And there are people that work there that represent each of the 7 deadly sins, and you hire a sin for a night. And many of the characters are deaf or blind or have a prosthetic limb. One of the characters in the first book of the Words We Never Said series, which is a single dad series, which again, not my favorite, but these characters are super fun. The very first book, the single dad character meets this person because his daughter, who's like 4 or 5, is a bit of a kleptomaniac, and she steals his prosthetic limb. And she runs back into their yard like, "Dad, look what I found!" And she's like, is waving a leg around. So God, I love E.M. Lindsay's very, very talented author. They write some phenomenal things. So definitely read the rest of the Brew Biz series.
Excellent. And what are you shipping this week?
I'm going to go with like comfort TV watches. The Mentalist is one of my favorite comfort watch TV shows. It's an older show. Like, it was 7 seasons. It's been done for quite some time. It's on Amazon Prime in Canada. I just like to watch it. It was like, it started in like 2008, and then I think it ended in like, I don't know, like 2015, 2016. A little bit connected to our previous episode on our super paranormal things, because it's not paranormal. It's basically, it has like it is a police procedural involving the CBI, or California Bureau of Investigation. So the state version of the FBI. And there's a character named Patrick Jane, who at the beginning of the series, you find out that he was a con man. He was brought up as like a carny and a con man. He pretended to be psychic. Well, he got famous for doing that, and he pissed off a serial killer named Red John. And because he was going on the news, and I was like, I can see into his brain. Anyway, Red John retaliated by killing his wife and young daughter. So he joins as a consultant for the CBI, ultimately because he wants to track down and get revenge on Red John. So that's the big overarching arc that essentially gets resolved, I think, in season 6, and then season 7 is kind of like what happens after that. It's a police procedural. It's got Robin Tunney plays the main agent in charge that becomes like Patrick's best friend, eventual love interest. You'll see it coming. It's 7 seasons of a will they won't they, but so good. And Simon Baker plays Patrick Jane, the psychic, and he is just so good. Like, it's a really easy police procedural watch, but has some really cool characters in it. I love Simon Baker in that show. He's so good. So I just like comfort watches. There are some series that I have watched, like Archer. I've seen that show probably 12 times the entire way through. Brooklyn Nine-Nine, I think I've seen the first 5 seasons multiple times. Like, I like comfort watches. My comfort watch right now is The Mentalist. I'm also kind of watching Rizzoli and Isles at the same time because they're both on Amazon Prime right now in Canada. So, all
right. Well, we'll put all of those into the show notes. Make sure to make sure to subscribe. And we will be back next week, where we'll be back into our paranormal romance month. So see you all, or hear you all then. Thank you, Nikki.
Or see us on YouTube.
Yeah. Bye. Bye.